In today's world, law enforcement agencies play a fundamental role in ensuring legality and order in society. However, sometimes it turns out that even those who are supposed to uphold the law themselves become violators. Welcome to our video, Top 5 Police Officers Who Turned Out to Be Criminals, where we will examine 5 law enforcement officers whose actions have left a shocking mark in the history of law enforcement. Police officers are those who are called to protect our rights and ensure our well-being, but sometimes they themselves become perpetrators. Their stories remind us that even within a law-abiding profession, there are individuals prone to criminal activities. Randy Kraft, also known as the Scorecard Killer, was a reserve police officer and serial killer who operated in California in the 1970s and 1980s. His crimes included at least 16 known murders of young men. Here are some key points from Randy Kraft's history. Kraft targeted young men, often under the age of 25. He would meet them in bars and nightclubs, offer them rides, or invite them to his place, and then assault, rape, and murder them. Many of his victims were drug users or prostitutes, which made them less conspicuous to the police and society. Kraft meticulously documented his crimes, keeping what became known as a scorecard of his murders. He left records of each killing, including the date, location, specific details, and even drawings. This macabre practice later became crucial evidence against him. The maniac Randy Kraft was arrested for a routine traffic violation, unsurprisingly, as he was heavily intoxicated. Upon inspecting his car, the police discovered the body of a 25-year-old man with signs of violent death. Within a week, California law enforcement knew that they had apprehended another serial killer. Randy Kraft never confessed to the murders attributed to him, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. He was convicted of 16 murders, although his encrypted list contained 65 names. In the following decades, Kraft remained in prison, and his case underwent numerous appeals. In 2002, he was sentenced to death, but the appeals process continued. As of my last knowledge update in September 2021, he remained on death row awaiting. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. is an American serial killer, serial rapist, robber, former policeman and mechanic who committed at least 13 murders, 51 rapes, and 120 burglaries throughout California between 1974 and 1986. DeAngelo acted according to the same scheme. Between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, he broke into the homes of single women and immediately blindfolded them and put a gag in their mouths. He acted very professionally, silently opening window and door locks. Then the criminal raped the victim and took all the most valuable things from the house, mainly cash and jewelry. On the evening of April 24, 2018, Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies arrested DeAngelo in the courtyard of his home in Sacramento. He was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder under special circumstances. On May 10, the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office charged DeAngelo with 4 additional counts of first-degree murder. When DeAngelo was arrested, his personality surprised everyone. He turned out to be a former military man who received an excellent psychological characteristic in the service. In particular, his superiors noted his discipline, patience, endurance, and fortitude. In addition, the criminal worked for a long time in the police and received information about the victims from closed information bases. The lawyers tried to soften the judges with DeAngelo's shattered health. He could hardly walk, and sometimes he was taken to court sessions in a wheelchair and with an oxygen tank. The judges, however, did not consider old age and illness a mitigating circumstance. One of the most terrible people in American history will never be released. Plus, Christopher Dorner was a former police officer with the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, and became known as a serial killer and fugitive from justice. His case garnered significant public and media attention. Christopher Dorner was born in 1979. He served in the LAPD from 2005 to 2008 but was later terminated from the police force. His dismissal was related to allegations of corruption and violations of internal police rules. In February 2013, Dorner began a series of killings. He murdered 2 police officers and 2 individuals not affiliated with the police. Before these acts, he published a manifesto in which he accused the LAPD of corruption, violence, and discrimination and declared his intent for vengeance. Following the commencement of his killings, Dorner went into hiding, prompting a massive manhunt to locate him. The manhunt involved numerous law enforcement agencies, including the LAPD and the FBI. His fugitive status spanned multiple states. In February 2013, Christopher Dorner was found in a hideout in the California mountains. During an attempt to apprehend him, he engaged in an armed confrontation with the police and was killed. Mikhail Popkov, the werewolf in Russia. There is the case of Mikhail Popkov, a former policeman and serial killer who raped and killed women in the 1990s. His criminal activity and brutality against the victims caused a wide public response and media attention. Here is more detailed information about Mikhail Popkov and his crimes. Popkov chose women as his victims, most often young students who were alone on the streets of Novosibirsk. Posing as a policeman, he persuaded them to go with him to remote places. After that, he raped and killed his victims. His crimes were particularly brutal. The exact number of victims of Mikhail Popkov remains unclear, but it is assumed that he killed at least 22 women. Popkov was arrested in 2012 when his DNA was linked to one of the evidence at the crime scene. After his arrest, he confessed to a series of murders and rapes, and his arrest caused a wide public outcry. In 2015, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Popkov was nicknamed the werewolf because of the brutality and ferocity of his crimes, as well as because of his long ability to avoid arrest, which gave the impression of a ghost who walks away from justice. John Christie was a British serial killer who was infamous for a series of murders committed in London during and after World War II. John Reginald Halliday Christie was born on April 8, 1899, in Halifax, West Yorkshire, England. He served in the military during World War I and later worked various jobs, including as a police officer and a postman. Between 1943 and 1953, Christie murdered at least 8 women, including his wife, Ethel Christie. He lured women to his apartment at 10 Rillington Place in London, where he strangled them. Some of his victims were sexually assaulted or subjected to other forms of violence. In 1953, the bodies of several of Christie's victims were discovered hidden in and around his residence. This discovery led to his arrest and the investigation of his heinous crimes. Christie was arrested, tried, and found guilty of the murders. He was sentenced to death. On July 15, 1953, he was executed by hanging at Pentonville Prison in London. It would seem that justice has prevailed, but there was a significant judicial error in this case. An innocent man, Timothy Evans, was wrongfully convicted of the murder of his wife and daughter, which was actually committed by John Christie. Timothy Evans was executed in 1950. The death sentence of Timothy Evans caused a great public outcry and became one of the most famous miscarriages of justice in history. He was one of the main reasons for the abolition of the death penalty in the UK in 1965.